Alright, so we did win the die roll here. So let's go ahead and play. This hand seems fine. We're kind of looking for Nahiri, though, because that's the card that really lets us win very quickly. But in any case, we definitely have some action here, depending on what our opponent's up to. Although this could be burn, which would be pretty bad news. Or zoo. So looks like zoo. Not at all what we wanted to see, especially given our hand. We'd really like to see a lightning bolt or lightning helix or something to be able to take this Nicatl off the board right now, but we don't have one of those cards, and so this Goblin Guide is pretty bad news, but we're just going to go ahead and let it hit the table. And let's see what our opponent is going to search for here. It's going to be Sacred Foundry and then Monastery Swiftspear. Yep, that's going to resolve. Our plan is just going to be to play the Snapcaster Mage here as a blocker. And we do have a Lightning Helix on top, so that's pretty good news. So we're just gonna play Snapcaster and block the Goblin Guide. Just trying to take as little damage as possible. And sequencing our lands may be pretty important here. We definitely want to Helix away the Wild Nicatl. And the question is, do we want to hold up for Spell Snare here? I think we probably do. So, in fact, what we might want to do is go ahead and pass the turn here and try to get our opponent to go ahead and walk into our Spell Snare. So what I mean by this is it's kind of a moto trick, but if our opponent has something like a Boros Charm or a Tarka's Command, those are cards that could potentially save the Wild Nicatl. And so we actually want our opponent to cast one of those cards this turn, so that we can Spell Snare it. And we'll see if that's how things play out. So in response to this Swiftspear, we're just going to go ahead and Helix away the Nicatl. And it looks like our opponent may just play into what we want to do with an Atarka's Command, but no, okay. So it's just going to be another Swiftspear and then Lava Spike, sorry. So that's pretty bad news. We're going now to 10 on the attack here. And yeah, we're just going to have to go ahead and electrolyze away one of these Monastery Swiftspears. And we drew a Lightning Bolt, so we're going to go ahead and bolt another one. So we were able to take away some of the pressure on us, but if our opponent just has 2 more burn spells, like if our opponent had a Tarka's Command here, we'd just be dead. But we're going to 5. And yep, just gonna play the Steam Vents. Next turn we can threaten to activate our Celestial Colonnade for blocks. This is pretty bad news. We're just gonna go ahead and cycle the Remand and hope to hit something like a Lightning Helix or a Lightning Bolt or some sort of removal, but we did not. So we're just going to take the hit here. Going down to 2 life. And, okay, Snapcaster Mage is actually a pretty good draw here. So, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and wait for our opponent to attack before using the Snapcaster Mage. It does mean that we're vulnerable to a top-decked Lightning Bolt, but it also means we're going to get to potentially trade our Snapcaster this turn. And we're going to go for the Helix. We have Spell Snare to cover Atarka's Command or Boros Charm. And so yeah, we'll see what our opponent does on this turn. So it looks like our opponent actually drew a Rift Bolt. So we're just going to go ahead and Snapcaster our Lightning Helix and Helix away the Swift Spear. And we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And so we're still at 2 life, so we're still in a rough spot, but our opponent's down to 13, so we're kind of hoping, well, optimally we draw a Lightning Helix, but we're hoping our opponent doesn't draw more burn. And, okay, so we drew a land off of this Goblin guy. We're forced to block with Snapcaster Mage. And we actually drew Mana Leak for our turn. That was a good draw for us. So we're just gonna still be able to swing with Celestial Colonnade and hold up Mana Leak. It looks like our opponent might have started to run out of gas. So we're just going to do the same play here. And we actually have our opponent dead in 2 turns. Though if our opponent draws Lightning Bolt or Lava Spike, or even Goblin Guide, we are going to lose to those cards. So it's pretty close. It looks like our opponent is going to shock themselves for a Boros Charm, but that's going to leave us the opening to Spell Snare it. And now we have Celestial Colonnade to attack back. So yep, actually able to take that one down somehow. After sideboard, the matchup gets better for us. We have another copy of Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix is just the best card against this type of deck. We have access to Dispels, and even more removal spells with Magma Spray and Anger the Gods. We definitely want to board in Timely Reinforcements. That's another form of life gain. So we could take out cards like Howl of Moonlight, Anticipate, Remand. Those are all cards that are pretty poor here. So we're just going to, just board in a bunch of removal. The sprays and anger. We probably even want this Engineered Explosives. Dispels and even Negate are generally better than cards like Mana Leak. And so yeah, this looks pretty solid. The question is, do we keep in all 4 Nahiris? And also Emrakul? And that's a pretty interesting question. But we do need a way to actually win the game, so I don't have a huge problem with it, but obviously we don't want to draw the Emrakul in this matchup. But yeah, let's try this. We're just going with the plan of a bunch of removal and then stick like a Nahiri and win from there. And so yeah, we have 2 removal spells, plus Snapcaster and a counter, so not a bad hand, although this Celestial Colonnade coming into play tapped is pretty annoying in terms of the fact that we want to be able to Path to Exile on turn 1, but we would have to use our Scalding Tart and take 3, so essentially lightning bolting ourselves, which isn't exactly what you want to be doing against these super aggressive Zoo decks. But we want to get this Wild Mikado off the table ASAP. And it looks like our best way to do that is going to be just lightning bolting ourselves with the Scalding Tarn. And we'll just go ahead and get Hallowed Fountain here. And giving the Zoo deck another land isn't really that bad for us, because normally these decks top out at 3 mana. So Path to Exile is almost just Swords of Plowshares here, but looks like we're up against even more Wild Mikado action. So we drew a Lightning Helix. We'll go ahead and Helix away one of them. And next turn we have still the Path to Exile available to us. So hopefully this turn isn't too bad for us and we can stabilize a little bit. Looks like our opponent did shock themselves with the Sacred Foundry, so that could signal something like a Boros Charm. But I like just playing this Colonnade tapped and saying go here. And if our opponent goes for a Boros Charm here, we're just going to take it. We're going to save the negate. We really want to be countering the burn spells once we've dealt with all the creatures, not beforehand. So Path to Exile also gets around a card like Boros Charm. It's pretty much unconditional removal in this matchup. So that's why we can afford to just play it whenever we want, essentially. And we'll see if our opponent has a follow-up here. If not, we're definitely looking in a reasonable position. And it looks like no follow-up whatsoever. So let's just go ahead and play the Desolate Lighthouse so that now we have access to Snapcaster plus Lightning Helix. And it looks like our opponent may just be passing the turn here. So I kind of like just running out a Snapcaster Mage. It does mean that we could potentially get a Tarkas Commanded, for instance, or something like that, but we want to get some pressure on our opponent and not just play this draw-go game if we can help it. And our opponent's already at 11, so the burn spell to our opponent's face is pretty relevant here. And we're not just going to get burned out from 13. So yeah, going up to 12, and our opponent's all the way down to 8. And now we're sitting pretty, because we have a threat on the table, and we have counter spells in hand. And we still have another Snapcaster Mage, so if our opponent plays a creature, we can still Snapcaster Mage one of the Path to Exiles. So there's really no one card that we're worried about here. And we have Desolate Lighthouse as well. If we want to activate it, we can, but there's no real need to at the moment. And our opponent's going to be forced to do something. We know that we're up against 4 cards in hand. We have the option of going ahead and activating a Celestial Colonnade right now. But rather than doing that, we're just going to go ahead and leave up the maximum amount of counter magic. And so, yep, our opponent's going for a Lightning Bolt. We're going to go ahead and dispel that. And here is a second copy of Lightning Bolt. We can negate it if we want to. So, yep, we're just going to go ahead and negate it. Although, if we let it resolve, we still have Celestial Colonnade to kill our opponent, but we might as well just fight over this, see what happens. So yeah, our opponent's all the way down to 2. Yep, that's going to be the match. Alright.